turn left.
All right, good morning, everyone. It's John Tapp with the Volvo VNL. That is part of Blackwing Hall. That was has been delivering excellence for 51 years. We're going to start with Oregon, since never mind. It's gonna be some short routes because my mom and I are doing some leftovers and so let's go for a ride all day. I hope you guys are enjoying the day off. Suppose if you suppose if you do. So, in fact, let's go for a ride.
Keep right, and then turn right. Turn right. Get ready to turn left. Turn left. Get ready to turn right. Turn right. Keep left, and then turn left. Turn left. Get ready to turn right. Turn right. This is where it ends. hit the road. Rerouting. Go straight on. Get ready. Turn right.
At the end of a required 1-year notification period. But as NPR's Gabrielle Emanuel reports,
right,
the WHO says the withdrawal is more complicated.
In order to leave the WHO, the U.S. is supposed to give
right.
1 year's notice. It did that. But it's also supposed to pay all its bills, which amount to $278 million. The State Department told NPR that's not happening. Lawrence Gostin is at Georgetown University and directs the WHO's Center on Global Health Law.
This is a very, very public and messy divorce between WHO and the United States.
He says practically the U.S. can leave, but it's unclear if the WHO will continue letting Washington participate in its meetings and share data about things like disease outbreaks. The State Department says it doesn't want to participate. Meanwhile, the head of the WHO is urging the U.S. to reconsider pulling out. Gabriella Emanuel, NPR News.
The nurses' strike in New York City is in its second week. The nurses are asking for better staffing levels to manage patients and safer conditions to protect them from workplace violence. The Professional Women's Hockey League says a new attendance record has been set. 17,228 fans came out to yesterday's game between the New York Sirens and the Montreal Victoire at Capital One Arena in Washington, D.C., the most in U.S. women's ice hockey history. The Sirens won 2-1. This is NPR News.
Support for NPR comes from NPR stations. Other contributors include FJC, a foundation of donor-advised funds working to maximize the impact of charitable giving and to create customized philanthropic solutions. Learn more at fjc.org.
Exit right.
I'm Jay Allison. Join us for more true personal stories told live on stage. No scripts, no notes, no nothing. Each Moth Radio Hour is a mix of funny and heartbreaking tales that captivate and surprise and delight audiences around the world with their honesty and bravery and humor. That's the Moth Radio Hour from PRX.
The Moth Radio Hour, Saturdays at noon on News 88.7.
No matter where you are, it's Texas Standard Time on this very chilly 19th day of January 2026. I'm David Brown. Hope you and yours are having a wonderful MLK Day. No matter the temperatures, parades, community celebrations, marches, and service events happening all across the Lone Star State on this Monday. More on King's legacy a little later in our broadcast. But first, one of the most unusual tests of the NATO alliance in its 76-year history. NATO was born at a time of rising Cold War tensions as a bulwark against the Soviet Union, now Russia. And it's in that context that through the years there have been NATO deployments and exercises in the past. But an unusual deployment getting lots of attention right now, this one requested by Denmark in response to President Trump's threats to take control of the world's largest island, Greenland, coupled with a promise to impose tariffs on countries that get in the way. Jeremy Suri is an historian and Mac Brown Distinguished Chair for Leadership in Global Affairs History and Public Policy at the University of Texas at Austin. Professor, welcome back.
Good to be with you, David.
Before we get into NATO's emergency meeting yesterday, why Greenland and why now?
Well, Greenland is a very large, 4 times the size of Texas, a very large territory in the Arctic, which is a very important area now for commercial traffic and also for military activities. So Greenland could be a very important strategic location in upcoming economic and strategic rivalries.
How does this eagerness from the Trump administration to acquire Greenland create a crisis for NATO? Could you explain that?
Well, the United States for the last 70 years has had a pretty good working relationship with the Danes, who oversee Greenland, even though the Greenlanders have a limited degree of home rule. And basically, they have allowed the United States to do what it needs to do in the region, and they've been some of our best partners. Now the United States has decided that this excellent partnership is not enough, and that we want to own and run the whole thing ourselves. And obviously, the Danes and other NATO members are not comfortable with this. NATO was created as an organization in 1949 to prevent any forcible seizure of territory from one state or another, and that's what it looks like the United States is trying to do.
All of this is happening just days after a White House meeting with Danish officials and the U.S. president, and I gather that the president openly questioned Danish sovereignty over Greenland, warning that the U.S. could just seize this territory if the president thought it necessary. Is it that straightforward?
It is not that straightforward, and that would be a terrible precedent for the United States, because then another country could make the same claims on the Virgin Islands, on Hawaii, on Alaska. The Danes have had authority in Greenland for about 300 years, and there is limited home rule, and the Danes have left it up to the Greenlanders, 60,000 or so of them, to make the decision about their future. There is no evidence they have any interest, the Greenlanders do, in becoming another state of the United States. And so there's no legal basis for Trump to do what he said. He sounded more like Vladimir Putin than like an American president.
Well, let's talk about the realpolitik. What's to stop President Trump if he and his defense secretary decide we're doing this?
There's a lot to stop them. This is not going to be any kind of easy operation. Yes, the United States has overwhelming military superiority, but we don't have nearly enough force in that region, so we'd have to move force to that region. And the Europeans have already shown that they will put force in that area to defend Greenland. So we could have a potential clash between American and European soldiers. The United States would probably win that war in the long run, but is that a war that any president wants to fight? Is the cost worth it? And it would destroy NATO, and boy, would it give Vladimir Putin the opportunity now to claim part of Poland or part of Lithuania, other NATO allies. Would we want to open that door? I think would be far too costly to the United States.
Isn't there already an agreement going way back to Cold War days in which the United States could pretty much use a huge part of Greenland for its own military purposes without any need to take it over? I mean, tomorrow the U.S. could decide it's going to send in X number of troops to go back to those old worn-out stations that and bases they used to have there.
This is such an important point, David. Yes, throughout the Cold War, the United States maintained upwards of 10, sometimes as many as 15,000 soldiers in Greenland. And we had major bases, including bases with nuclear weapons and nuclear-armed aircraft. We had major accidents at some of these bases, too, by the way. And under our treaty agreements with the Danes, we're able to do this. There's nothing stopping us from doing this now. The Danes have been the best possible partners in allowing us to use Greenland for military necessity. There's no reason from a military point of view that we need to own it. We're using it as we wish.
Jeremy, how do you see this playing out longer term?
Well, I think what the Europeans are trying to do is they're trying not to antagonize Trump. They don't want to escalate, as Prime Minister Starmer said from England. They don't want to escalate this issue. They're hoping that they can convince Trump to back down by giving him some symbolic concessions, like maybe saying to him, you know what, you can open new military bases here, or we'll share the mineral resources with you, things they're already doing, but make it look like a symbolic victory for Trump so Trump can claim that his threats produced what he wanted and then back down. I hope that's how this ends, but it very well could end in a standoff where I don't imagine the United States will use military force, but where we see increased tariffs and basically a trade war between the U.S. and Europe as Trump has threatened. That would harm us, that would harm our allies across the Atlantic, and that would help Russia and China.
Professor Jeremy Zurich with the University of Texas at Austin, thanks so much for joining us again.
Thank you.
There have been 3 deaths reported in the last 2 months at the nation's largest immigration detention facility located in El Paso, adjacent to Fort Bliss. The most recent death was on Wednesday, a 36-year-old from Nicaragua arrested earlier this month in Minneapolis. That believed to be a suicide, according to the most recent reports. The first death was in early December. That was linked to a long-standing illness. But the second, the death of a 55-year-old Cuban national, is drawing widespread scrutiny and is likely to be ruled a homicide. Here to tell us more, Douglas McMillan, who reports for the Washington Post. Douglas, welcome to the Texas Standard.
Hi, thanks for having me.
Tell us more about this death on January 3rd at that ICE facility. It's known as Camp East Montana. What is known about what actually happened?
Yeah, well, ICE put out a press release, as they typically do with all deaths in detention. This occurred about 6 days after this death. They put out a press release that didn't say many details about the cause of death. Essentially, they said that this man was being disruptive. He was taken to the isolated segregation unit, and then at some point after that, the staff observed him in distress, and then they went to try to save his life, and then he died. I started getting indications from my sources that there was a use of force incident. So I started looking into this. I contacted the family of this man, who also had heard something along the lines of there was some kind of a conflict, some kind of a disruption between this man and the staff. And as the family members started looking into it, they contacted the medical examiner who was performing an autopsy, and the autopsy is still not concluded, but on a preliminary basis, the medical examiner told his family that they believe that the cause of death is asphyxia due to compression of the chest and neck, which means he did not get enough oxygen, and that they're preparing to lists the manner of death as homicide. And so as the family started looking into it, obviously they were very concerned about that because that's not what the government had been telling them, and nobody had indicated that to them at this point. The family members started getting calls from inside the facility of other fellow detainees who said they were witness to his death, and that one of them said that he observed guards choking the man to death.
You also report that there may have been consequences for two of those, the two detainees that helped get the word out about what may have happened there in the facility. What more do you know about that?
Yeah, these two men went on the record with me. The family connected me with the two men who said that they were witnesses to this occurring. They very bravely put their name behind their statements and their accounts of events. Those accounts now, as I said, are backed up by the findings of a medical examiner, and those accounts conflict with what the government is saying about this death. The government, by the way, now is saying that they think the man tried to kill himself. So there's a conflicting account there, and now what we know is that these two men, since speaking to me, the government has been taking steps to deport them, to get them out of the country. Now, they were already targeted for deportation. These are men who both have criminal records, and they were, sent to detention. That's kind of the last stop before you're deported. But it is notable that they're being deported after coming forward as witnesses to what is being investigated, because their accounts and their versions of events will be difficult for investigators to verify and obtain if they're sent off to another country. So,
Douglas, step back. What's the big picture here as you see it?
I think that there's an escalating crisis in these detention centers as they're flooding with more and more people. I think the detention center staff are unprepared for it. In many cases, maybe they haven't trained or gave oversight to the staff there. And these situations are kind of getting out of control and unattainable. And in this situation with this man, Geraldo Lunas Campos, the worst happened. I think we're already starting to see an escalating number of deaths in detention. There have been 6 deaths in just the first 2 weeks of this year. It's an unprecedented rate. And the question will be, does the government acknowledge that this is a crisis, and what steps will they take to try to address that crisis?
Douglas McMillan is covering this story for the Washington Post. We'll have links to his reporting at texasstandard.org. Doug, thanks so much for joining us.
Thanks for having me. My pleasure.
Audience and engagement editor Wells Dunbar joins us now with the Talk of Texas. Wells?
Hi, David. We're talking about Greenland and not as a travel destination. President Trump again floating the idea that the United States should somehow control Greenland, that self-governing territory of Denmark. Depending on who you ask, it's everything from a far-fetched strategic play to a distraction to something far more unsettling about how the U.S. treats its allies. We asked Texans what they make of it, and the responses are all over the map. So if you've got thoughts about these unprecedented times we're experiencing, we want to hear them. Record a quick voice memo at texasstandard.org/talk. texasstandard.org/talk. Press that record button on your smartphone. I'll be back later in the show with more of what Texans are saying and what this debate might tell us about where American power is headed next. Again, that's texasstandard.org/talk. We're looking to hear from plenty of folks out there. David?
Wells Dunbar, monitoring the Talk of Texas. They were institutions started to address the systematic denial of access to higher ed, opportunities for learning, leadership, economic advancement. But today, there are a lot of misconceptions about the evolving role of historically black colleges and universities, and a new documentary airing on PBS hopes to remedy that. We'll hear more as the Standard continues.
Support for Texas Standard comes from Texas Mutual Insurance Company, a workers' compensation provider committed to handling claims to help injured workers get back to work. More at texasmutual.com/mutualcare.
From the Center for Investigative Reporting and PRX, this is Reveal.
If people are dying in your hospital of overdoses, you should know how many there are.
I'm Al Letson. We bring you the best investigative reporting, true stories with impact, over the airwaves every single week. Reveal, because there's always more to the story.
Reveal, Saturdays at 2 p.m. on News 88.7.
Support for Houston Public Media comes from the Clarion at Brazosport College, featuring the Westerly's Brass Quartet on January 16th at 7:30 p.m. tickets and more information at brazosport.edu/Clarion. Support for Houston Public Media comes from Rice University's Kinder Institute Annual Luncheon, April 27th, sharing findings from the 45th Kinder Houston Area Survey. Tickets at kinder.rice.edu.
You've got it tuned to the Texas Standard. I'm Laura Rice. Students seeking higher education have some difficult choices to make. Often these are financial, how to get the degree they'll need without getting into unsustainable debt. But the choices about if and where to go to college go far beyond that, to issues of academic, extracurricular, and cultural opportunity. For more than 180 years, HBCUs have been one option in the U.S., but a new PBS documentary aims to bring historically black colleges and universities to the forefront of the conversation. It's a project called Opportunity, Access, and Uplift, the Evolving Legacy of HBCUs, and it's produced and hosted by Brandis Griffith Friedman, an anchor at PBS Chicago. Brandis, welcome to the Texas Standard.
Hi, thank you so much for having me.
So why tell the story of HBCUs right now?
Why not now, obviously, but also, we have, these nationwide conversations about higher education, the cost of higher education, at the same time, the value of them, right? And I think for a lot of time, HBCUs have kind of been a well-kept secret, right? A lot of us know about them, but even, there are some students that we interview in the film who weren't aware of the HBCU opportunities, in their community until it was time to start looking at colleges. It was different for me growing up in Mississippi. I come from a family of HBCU grads. As this film was coming out, I heard from my aunt that I'm fifth generation HBCU. I did not know that, I did not realize that going that far back in my family, that many people had gone to an HBCU. So I am fortunate. I've always been aware, but I think not everybody else has recognized the value and the importance of HBCUs in the higher ed conversation. You may come from a community that is largely black, and attending an HBCU is, that's like home for you, right? Like that's something that you are very familiar with. Or you come from a community where you are the literal, numerical minority, and it feels different to be in a community that's largely black. It can be both supportive, but also a little bit, kind of surprising and startling, educating.
Yeah, and you compare HBCUs to another acronym that you constantly kind of have to remind folks what this means. What's a PWI?
Yes, a lot of people don't know what that is because they don't know otherwise, right? PWI is predominantly white institution, and you would not know that if you did not know that there are also predominantly not white institutions that are HBCUs and minority-serving institutions, which we also call MSIs, as are a number of Hispanic-serving institutions and tribal universities, colleges and universities as well.
Well, this seems like a really good point to talk about how HBCUs serve, historically, black students. They are still a place where black students thrive, and a lot of them graduate and get their degrees, but they're not exclusively for black students and really haven't been for a very, very long time.
Absolutely, yeah. And they've never been exclusively, although they've always been predominantly black, right? Like the whole reason for their foundation was because these universities were founded at a time when blacks sought education in large numbers, but the schools that existed, which were white schools, of course, those schools were not accepting black students. And even in the film, we introduce, and I don't want to, give it away, but we introduce a history maker, Joan Trumpauer Mulholland, who a white woman, a freedom rider during, the 60s. And because of her civil rights activism, she was kicked out of her PWI at the time. And Tougaloo College, which is my aunt's alma mater in Mississippi and where she taught for many years later on, accepted her. And so she was the first white woman to enroll in an HBCU at that time. And so today, the enrollment of HBCUs nationwide is 25% non-black. So a quarter of HBCU enrollment is not black.
Well, let's talk a little bit about, I guess, there was a turning point in history for everybody and for HBCU specifically, and it was 2020, of course, right? This was COVID year, but it was also, as we know, there was the racial reckoning really sparked by the police killing of George Floyd. Can you talk about what we saw and what we have continued to see at HBCUs since that point?
Yeah, in the film, you hear UNCF President Dr. Michael Lomax, who was also the Dillard University president when I was a student there, but that's a tangent. But he uses the analogy, when America gets a cold, Black America gets the flu. Whatever is happening, it's just happening that much worse or cutting that much deeper for the Black community. I think his point was, we're wrestling with all of this, and, Blacks are dying in larger rates or being infected at larger rates of COVID at the time. And then on top of that, this racial reckoning rises up, and really bubbling over a problem that Blacks had been familiar with and experiencing for years and years, and decades, in fact. So it also, I think, a lot of students, looked around at that and they thought, I want to go to some place that sees me and that supports me, because it has become apparent that that is not going to be the case at just any university. I think it's several years ago, maybe 10 or 15 years ago, enrollment for lots of universities started to slide across the country. But for Black universities, their enrollment has still seen a bit of growth, even in fact, since the Supreme Court's decision on affirmative action and basically saying that race cannot be a factor in enrollment decisions. I think we've even seen some numbers since then of Black enrollment at some of the elite and traditionally white universities has slipped, and applications have certainly increased at HBCUs across the country.
Is there a crisis point coming? You talk about the need that HBCUs fill and really the demand for them, but how their endowments really don't match a lot of the big universities, the predominantly white institutions that we've talked about.
They don't, and I hope it is not a crisis, because, there have been PWIs to close in the last few years as well. I can't count any HBCUs that have closed in the last 5-6 years. I will say this, I think a lot of people have started to notice the importance and the impact of HBCUs, and the money has started to flow their way. Certainly, Mackenzie Scott, Dr. Lomax has called her Saint Mackenzie Scott for the massive, transformational multi-million-dollar donation that she has made to UNCF. UNCF's goal is to stake a large endowment for all of the 101 nationwide, but only, I forget what number it is, maybe 50 or so that are UNCF endowed schools. And so there is work to grow those endowments collectively and individually, and Mackenzie Scott has given individually to many HBCUs as well. And so I hope that is to sort of meet the moment. These schools have always needed the investment. They've always been underfunded and underinvested in compared to PWIs, but also to meet the challenge that might be down the road as applications at HBCUs are increasing, that this money is there to support them.
Well, we should mention 101 HBCUs, including 9 here in Texas. Depending on where students want to go, it's not a one and it is the same as all, right? There are a lot
Absolutely.
Of variety and opportunity out there among those as well. Is that important to highlight?
Absolutely, right? Because you've got, there are some HBCUs that are the big ones. They're in the SWAC conference, and they've got the football team and the marching band, and, that comes with a very different culture. I think the students at Prairie View probably know what I'm talking about. But then there are the schools like the one that I went to, smaller private HBCUs, like where you feel a little bit closer, a smaller school where you can get to know folks and the staff and your professors there a little bit better.
Brandis Griffith-Friedman is an anchor at PBS Chicago and the host of the new PBS documentary Opportunity, Access, and Uplift, the Evolving Legacy of HBCUs. You can find it on your local PBS station. Brandis, thank you again.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Support for Texas Standard comes from the beef-loving Texans at the Texas Beef Council, a community passionate about what they eat, where it comes from, and how it's prepared. Recipes and meal ideas at beeflovingtexans.com.
Doom scrolling. Let's break that habit, folks. I'm Aisha Roscoe, host of Weekend Edition Sunday, where if you want to know what's going on in the world and why it matters, All you have to do is give your thumb a rest and perk up your ears. We've got the news, but we've also got curiosity, joy, and surprise. Tune in for Weekend Edition from NPR News.
Weekend Edition, Saturdays and Sundays from 7 to 9 a.m. on News 88.7.
Whether your weekend is full of work or play, recharging or catching up, life doesn't stop. And the news and the stories that impact your life every day, they don't slow down. All Things Considered is here every Saturday and Sunday to bring you the news and help you lighten up with the latest in music, movies, and books. Join us for thoughtful conversations and reporting that keeps you in the know and your weekend rolling.
All Things Considered Weekend, Saturdays and Sundays at 4 p.m. on News 88.7.
From the Texas Newsroom, I'm Matt Harab. Unconfirmed reports circulating on social media claim that Immigration and Customs Enforcement agents have been going door to door in and around San Antonio in search of people without legal status. Texas Public Radio's Jerry Clayton reports that some residents allege ICE agents have been sweeping neighborhoods on the city's west side and removing people from their homes.
Gabriel Rosales, Texas State Director of the League of United Latin American Citizens, said he's heard similar reports but hasn't been able to confirm any such incidents have occurred. Rosales criticized the Trump administration's policy of mass deportations.
They're trampling all over our constitutional rights. They're trampling over human rights.
Neither the San Antonio Police Department nor the Bexar County Sheriff's Office has issued any public statements confirming or denying ICE activity in the area. ICE did not immediately respond to TPR's request for comment. I'm Jerry Clayton in San Antonio.
Testimony resumes tomorrow in Corpus Christi in the trial of former Uvalde police officer Adrian Gonzalez. On Friday, defense lawyer Nico LaHood questioned DPS Lieutenant Nick Hill about the response of other officers during the shooting.
There's a big deal made of when Adrian got there, when Adrian went into the building, what Adrian saw, what Adrian knew, what Adrian was told, what Adrian perceived. So don't you think it's only fair that we look at what other officers saw, perceived, did, and entered? Can we do that, please? Yes. Okay, so that's all I was saying. He didn't enter this building for 25 plus minutes, right? Correct. Okay, that's all I was asking.
Gonzalez is the only officer charged over the botched law enforcement response during the 2022 shooting at Robb Elementary. Voters can begin casting ballots for the Texas party primary elections in a month. The first day of early voting for the primaries is February 17th, but across the state, some voters haven't received their voter ID cards. As the Texas Newsroom's Blaise Gainey reports, that's due to last year's legal back and forth over the state's map over congressional districts.
Last summer, Texas Republicans pushed congressional redistricting through the state legislature. Then that new map forced legal challenges. While things played out in court, the Texas Secretary of State's office put a hold on mailing out voter registration cards. The cards couldn't be finalized until voting districts were certain, something the U.S. Supreme Court didn't decide until last month. But it's important to note a registration card is not required to cast a ballot. Instead, voters can bring any of the state's approved IDs to the polls. That includes a driver's license, passport, military ID, and more. It's also a good time to make sure your voter registration is active. Texans can do that by visiting votetexas.gov. I'm Blaise Gainey in Austin.
And there are no more Texas teams in the NFL playoffs. The Texans lost to the Patriots over the weekend 28-16. I'm Matt Harab in the Texas Newsroom.
You're listening to statewide news from public radio stations across Texas. This coverage is only possible because of support from listeners like you. You can help sustain and grow Texas news coverage by donating to your local public radio station today.
33 minutes past the hour, Texas Standard Time. I'm David Brown. If you lived in California, the water temperature of the Pacific Ocean might be useful to track. But here in Texas, it's pretty critical, too. Not the water temperature off the coast of California so much, but the temperature down near the equator. Because when the surface temperatures are higher, our weather goes one way. When they're lower, something else happens. And they've been lower for a while, giving us unusually warm and dry weather statewide. But now some meteorologists are warning that could change this year, which means what's ahead for our weather? Here to tell us more, Anthony Franz, a meteorologist who covers weather in Texas, and he recently wrote a story for the San Antonio Express News suggesting an El Niño's on the way. He joins us now to explain. Anthony, welcome to the Texas Standard.
Hey, thanks, David. It's good to be here. And yeah, La Nina, it has been active for the last few months. They actually announced it was active starting in October of last year, and it's still active now in mid-January this year, and it's really brought warm weather all across the state, statewide. average temperatures have been between really 5 and 8 degrees above average in almost every city across Texas this winter, and it's been extremely dry too. Austin, San Antonio, and Dallas, they've all seen less than half an inch of rain so far this winter, which is just crazy low.
So now we're looking at the possibility of an El Nino, which means what? The water is getting warmer down near the equator, and what will we see here in Texas?
Right. It's looking now that La Nina is probably going to end here in the next month or two. And then kind of the long-range forecast models do show that water in the kind of the central to eastern Pacific near the equator is going to start to warm up. And when that happens, we get an El Nino weather pattern because a lot of things happen in the global circulations that cause that to happen. Because it sounds kind of arbitrary, right? That water temps thousands of miles away would cause our weather to be different. But it changes the global kind of atmospheric circulations, and it causes the Pacific jet stream to dip closer to Texas, causes our temperatures to fall, and also kind of a more active weather pattern too. So more rain chances, even more snow chances during an El Nino winter as well.
Yeah, when is this change supposed to kick in? When will we start to see the effects of this El Nino?
Right, so during the summer, this coming summer, it's looking like it's going to be a neutral pattern, so neither La Nina or El Nino. And then by the time we get into the fall, say about October, NOAA is now predicting that there's a 60% chance that we'll have an El Nino weather pattern by fall of this coming year. And that likely will even continue to increase as we go into the winter. So right now, at least a 60% chance of an El Nino, and that even could go higher as we get closer to fall and winter.
Mm-hmm. You mentioned that in an El Nino situation, weather tends to be a little bit more active. Does that mean severe? I mean, should we be bracing for instance, more severe hurricane season, for example, that sort of thing?
No, not quite. Mainly El Nino, the biggest impacts happen in the winter, first of all. And so the main things we're going to see is by next winter with an El Nino, you're really looking at kind of a more active weather pattern with more rain chances, colder temperatures, potentially even more snowfall across parts of Texas, particularly North Texas, where they see more snow than the southern half of the state. Hurricane season, there's not a huge connection with El Nino in La Nina. Sometimes La Nina can produce a little bit of a more active season, but it's a little bit less predictable in terms of hurricanes and severe thunderstorms, which are kind of more on a small scale.
What should we be bracing for as a practical matter, or maybe considering as a practical matter? I guess taking some of the heavier sweaters out for next winter, perhaps. I wonder if there's anything more serious.
I mean, right now, there's nothing to kind of brace for or kind of panic about, because El Nino and La Nina, there's no guarantee that you're going to see this particular type of weather, but really, it only gives you a better chance. Say, for instance, I'm going to give a football analogy. And normally, you have a 1st and 10 yards to get to a first down. If you have an El Nino, it's more like a 1st and 5. So there's a better chance that you get that first down. And so with an El Nino, there's a better chance that we're going to have colder and wetter winter weather next year, but it's not a guarantee.
That was a wonderful analogy there. And in fact, we're going to link to Anthony's reporting in the San Antonio Express News at our website, texasstandard.org, so you can dig a little bit deeper. Anthony Franz is a meteorologist who covers Texas weather. Anthony, thanks so much for speaking with us on the Standard. We certainly do appreciate it.
Absolutely.
It's not just about the brisket or the ribs or the sausage or even the sides. It's the culture and people who are passionate about it. Where there's smoke, there's Daniel Vaughn, Texas Monthly Barbecue Editor. Make sure to join us Thursday on the Texas Standard.
Support for Where There's Smoke comes from HEB.
Ever have a moment when you learn the truth behind a
a story, and it changes how you think about a whole lot of things. I'm Brooke Gladstone from On the Media, and we have that experience every single week. It's kind of a rush. So join us at WNYC Studios On the Media.
On the Media, Saturdays at 5 p.m. on News 88.7.
So,
where are you? You're at Radio Lab. We go places.
Riding in an elevator.
From the bathroom.
We're walking through shin-length grass. Are we in a boat?
No, but we're gonna be.
In Namibia.
On Mars.
In my closet.
Poughkeepsie, New York.
To
Kolkata. Inside the womb.
Wow. And
everywhere.
You guys are doing lobster.
Go straight on. Radio Lab, Saturdays at 9 p.m. on News 88.7.
It's the Texas Standard. I'm David Brown. As we celebrate and honor the late Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. today, we want to share a portion of a special from a long-running radio and podcast series produced by our home station, KUT News. John L. Hanson Jr. is the producer and host of the award-winning show, In Black America.
Go straight on.
In 1953, King completed his doctorate and was granted the degree 2 years later upon completion of his dissertation. Married at the time, he returned to the South to become pastor of Dexter Avenue Baptist Church in Montgomery, Alabama. There, he made his first mark on the civil rights movement. King's fight for justice and equal rights began on December 5, 1955, 5 days after the late Rosa Parks refused to obey the city rules mandating segregation on buses. In 1956, as the boycott continued, King gained national prominence as a result of his exceptional speaking skills and personal courage. Although increasingly portrayed as a preeminent black spokesperson, King did not mobilize mass protest activities during the first 5 years after the Montgomery bus boycott had ended. On August 28, 1963, King led a massive march on Washington, D.C., and delivered one of his most passionate addresses of his career.
Even the state of Mississippi, a state sweltering with the heat of injustice, sweltering with the heat of oppression, will be transformed into an oasis of freedom and justice. I have a dream. My poor little children one day live in a nation where they will not be judged by the color of their skin, but by the content of their character. I have a dream today. I have a dream that one day, down in Alabama, with its vicious racists, with its governor having his lips dripping with the words of interposition and nullification. One day right there in Alabama, little black boys and black girls will be able to join hands with little white boys and white girls as sisters and brothers. I have a dream today. I have a dream that one day every valley shall be exalted. Every hill and mountain shall be made low, the rough places will be made plain, and the crooked places will be made straight, and the glory of the Lord shall be revealed, and all flesh shall see it together. This is our hope. This is a faith that I go back to the South with. With this faith, we will be able to hew out of the mountain of despair a stone of hope. With this faith, we will be able to transform the jangling discords of our nation into a beautiful symphony of brotherhood. With this faith, we will be able to work together, to pray together, to struggle together, to go to jail together, to stand up for freedom together, knowing that we will be free one day. This will be the day. This will be the day when all of God's children be able to sing with new meaning, my country, tears of thee. Sweet land of liberty, of thee I sing. Land where my fathers died, land of the pilgrims pride. From every mountainside, let freedom ring. And if America is to be a great nation, this must become true. So let freedom ring. From the prodigious hilltops of New Hampshire, let freedom ring. From the mighty mountains of New York, Let freedom ring from the heightening Alleghenies of Pennsylvania. Let freedom ring from the snow-capped Rockies of Colorado. Let freedom ring from the curvaceous slopes of California. But not only that, let freedom ring from Stone Mountain of Georgia. Let freedom ring from Lookout Mountain of Tennessee. Let freedom ring from every hill and molehill of Mississippi, from every mountainside. Let freedom ring, and when this happens, when we allow freedom ring, when we let it ring from every village and every hamlet, from every state and every city, we will be able to speed up that day when all of God's children, black men and white men, Jews and Gentiles, Protestants and Catholics, will be able to join hands and sing in the words of the old Negro spiritual, free at last, free at last. Thank God Almighty, we are free at last.
In 1963, Time magazine named him its Person of the Year. A few months later, in December 1964, he was the recipient of the Nobel Prize for Peace. After his return from Norway, King took on new challenges. In Selma, Alabama, he led a voter registration campaign that ended in the Selma to Montgomery Freedom March. King brought his crusade to Chicago, where he started programs to rehabilitate the slums and provide housing. In April 1968, King lent his support to the Memphis sanitation workers. He wanted to discourage violence and wanted to focus national attention on the plight of the poor and unorganized workers of the city. The men were bargaining for basic union representation and long overdue raises. The strike became the new testing ground for the new direction of the Poor People's Campaign was taking, which merged civil rights issues with economic concerns. On the eve of his assassination, this was King and SCLC's second attempt at a nonviolent protest march.
I just want to do God's will. And he's allowed me to go up to the mountain. And I've looked over and I've seen the promised land. I may not get there with you, but I want you to know tonight that we as a people will get to the promised land. So I'm happy tonight. I'm not worried about anything. I'm not fearing any man. Mine eyes have seen the glory of the coming of the Lord.
Civil rights leader Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. was shot in the head and is now in critical condition in a Memphis, Tennessee hospital. The latest reports from Memphis say Dr. King was hit by gunfire while standing on the balcony of his hotel room just before 7 o'clock Eastern Standard Time.
The bullet exploded in his face. He was standing at an acute angle, and the bullet knocked him up off of his feet in that direction against that ledge over there. You couldn't tell it was a shot until it hit his face. It sounded like a stick of dynamite or a large firecracker.
Police say a man wearing a dark suit dropped the weapon about a block from the shooting scene and jumped into a late model white car.
Ladies and gentlemen, may I have your attention, please? At 7:10 this evening, Martin Luther King was shot in Tennessee. Martin Luther King, 20 minutes ago, died.
For those of you who are black and are tempted to be filled with hatred and mistrust of the injustice of such an act against all white people, I would only say that I can also feel in my own heart the same kind of feeling. I had a member of my family killed, but he was killed by a white man.
We encourage you to check out the full tribute from In Black America. We'll share a link at texasstandard.org, or you can find it wherever you get your podcasts.
This is the Texas Standard. I'm Laura Rice. Camp Mystic, the Christian summer camp in Kerr County where 27 girls died in the 4th of July flooding last year, faces multiple wrongful death lawsuits as it prepares to reopen later this year. The families see the lawsuits as an avenue toward accountability for a preventable tragedy, while the camp faces an existential threat over what it argues was an unpredictable weather event. Houston Public Media's Dominic Anthony Walsh reports new details about the early morning timeline on the day of the flooding are likely to play a role in the cases.
Kerr County 911, what is the location of your emergency? Hi, we're at Camp Mystic.
The first 911 call from Camp Mystic, placed by a counselor, came in at 3:56 in the morning.
Is it for the flooding?
Yes.
Okay,
I'm rising up and a lot of the cabins are flooded.
Yes, ma'am.
This audio comes from hundreds of recordings of 911 calls released by Kerrville last month in response to public records requests. According to a court filing by Camp Mystic, by this time, over 150 campers and counselors have been evacuated from rapidly flooding areas.
We are all getting out of all the cabins, but some of the cabins are filling up with water.
The attorney for Camp Mystic says owner Dick Eastland was still trying to evacuate campers just before that call was placed. He was swept away, along with an unclear number of young girls in his SUV. Data recovered from the car and his Apple Watch shows he hit a tree and sank into the river at 3:51 before that first 911 call, according to the attorney. Less than 30 minutes later, a resident who lives downriver from Camp Mystic called emergency dispatchers.
The flood is up to our house right now. We're okay, but we live about a mile down the road from Camp Mystic, and we've already got 2 little girls who have come down the river, and we've gotten to them, but I'm not sure how many else are out there.
The first call from Camp Mystic management came in at 5:38 a.m. Assistant Director Betsy Althouse told the dispatcher that her cell service was spotty. The first call from a member of the Eastland family, co-director Britt Eastland, came in at 7:22.
Kerr County 911, what's the location of your emergency?
Here at Camp Mystic in Hunt, Texas, we need search and rescue.
Okay, what's going on?
We're missing as many as 20 to 40 people.
What exactly happened in those early morning hours and what those actions say about how seriously camp management took the situation will play a significant role in the outcome of the 4 lawsuits against Camp Mystic. The plaintiffs argue the camp took too long to move the girls out of harm's way. Camp Mystic acknowledges evacuations did not start until nearly 2 hours after the first flood warning from the National Weather Service at 1:14 a.m. In a set of cabins with the youngest campers, girls were not evacuated in time to avoid the floodwaters that surged just before 4 a.m.
The ultimate decisions that led to this catastrophe and led to the loss of a lot of lives were the camp's decisions and the camp's only.
Houston-based attorney Kyle Finley represents 6 of the families. He argues the camp's existing flood plan, which called for campers to shelter in place, was inadequate for a predictable event of this magnitude.
There was no plan, and because there was no plan, a lot of people died.
They perished because we had a 1,000-year flood.
Michael Watts, representing Camp Mystic and the Eastlands, argues the camp's policies were appropriate for what they could reasonably predict, which did not include this flood. He emphasizes how rapidly the water started to rise around 3:30 when the National Weather Service issued a second flash flood warning.
I've got people that say we haven't seen a flood this high for 5,000 years. And oh, by the way, 5,000 years ago, there was a guy named Noah building an ark.
The parties also dispute the relevance of major flooding events before last July, including a major flood that impacted the camp as far back as 1932. And they disagree over Camp Mystic's decision to appeal floodplain designations by the Federal Emergency Management Agency, as well as whether Kerr County's lack of an outdoor siren played a relevant role in the tragedy. Joseph Sanders with the University of Houston Law Center says the question of predictability will be just as important as the details of what happened in those early morning hours.
So it was an extraordinary weather event. The question is whether you should expect serious weather events along this river, and at least there's some evidence you should.
For now, the parties are still battling over where the lawsuits will actually be heard. All 4 were filed in Travis County. Camp Mystic is asking the court to move them to Kerr County, where the property is located. The cases represent an existential threat to the century-old camp.
If, in fact, the plaintiffs were to prevail, I wouldn't be surprised if we saw judgments
All right,
in
ladies
the
and
$2 or $3
gentlemen,
million per
the time
child
is,
situation, which
11:55,
my guess is totally
and
exhausts the
I'm
assets
going to
of
be
this
taking
defendant.
a break.
That
in
estimate runs up to $69 million. For Matthew Childress, whose daughter Chloe was a counselor and
my
among the
last
victims,
one,
the case
and,
is primarily about
Salem,
accountability.
at the
It's
Walmart
really
there.
about, again, uncovering the
So,
true
I'm gonna
timeline,
be
the true
turning off
actions
the
that were taken,
radio for a
so
little
that
bit.
there can be full transparency, so
And,
we can all learn from what happened,
and
ultimately
I'll come
potentially
back,
accountability for that.
Regardless of
I
the
come back,
outcome, Childress says the
long
27
ride.
families will never recover from the loss of their girls.
And
I'm Dominic Anthony Walsh in Houston.
I know that you've been listening.
And you're listening to the
Standard.
Texas Standard.
That included Martin Luther King.
He's back. Audience and engagement editor Wells
so,
Dunbar with more of the talk of Texas.
So that is
Well,
why
Hi, David.
I
Great
have
to
a
be back.
dream of taking
And
a
as
break.
mentioned earlier, President Trump
So-
again raising the idea that the United States should
So,
somehow
I'll see you
control
after my
Greenland.
break.
The White House is framing.
And don't go anywhere. Thank you. Excuse me. All right. Welcome back, everyone. And since I stopped in Salem, Oregon, so we can now have a long ride, and I'm going to be turning the radio back on, NPR back on, and right after the first delivery, back after lunch, and so let's continue driving, and here we go.
Get ready to turn right. Turn right. Get ready to turn right. Turn right.
This programming is sponsored by the Clarion at Brazosport College, featuring the Westerly's Brass Quartet on January 16th at 7:30 p.m. Tickets and more information at brazosport.edu/Clarion.
Hottest kid in school, all the teachers and administrators like, oh, he had a book, because they didn't know who I was or what I did. They just see some bummy looking guy that drops them off and picks them up. But then they like read all the stuff and they're like, oh, that's who that is. That kid is at our school. But it was very exciting for him. Yeah. I think he liked it. I think he likes the book a little bit. And I appreciate you guys even bringing that up. I really just I'm like, I got to go and give something.
Yes.
Just because of your time. I appreciate you guys allowing me to be here. We appreciate you about the parade.
Nat Hatta, or I'm going to say it, Benjamin Thompson, author, is an afternoon radio show host and Grand Marshal.
You got the government in there, Jimbo.
I got you.
Be proud.
And a Grand Marshal for the upcoming MLK Unity Parade. Nat Hatta, thank you for joining us today on Hello Houston.
The best of Hello Houston on News 88.7. I'm Jim Kovacic, the executive producer of the show. And just a quick reminder, you can listen to our live Hello Houston show weekdays from 11 a.m. to 1 p.m. on News 88.7. You can also live stream the show at HoustonPublicMedia.org. Coming up on the best of Hello Houston, we'll hear from blues musician Brittany Davis about her latest music, and 610 Manufacturing's Joe Hoyle will tell us about the resurgence of vinyl. This is News 88.7.
You come to the New Yorker Radio Hour for conversations that go deeper with people you really want to hear from, whether it's Bruce Springsteen or Questlove or Olivia Rodrigo, Liz Cheney, or some of my extraordinarily well-informed colleagues at the New Yorker. So join us every week on the New Yorker Radio Hour for real conversations that matter.
The New Yorker Radio Hour, Sundays at 9 a.m. on News 88.7.
I'm Aisha Roscoe, host of Weekend Edition Sunday, where we're not just interested in what's going on in the world, but why it's happening and how. Details are important, so are different points of view. We're dedicated to bringing you the stories behind the big events, and the small ones too. Join us every Sunday morning for Weekend Edition from NPR News.
Finding a new route.
Weekend Edition, Saturdays and Sundays from 7 to 9 a.m. on News 88.7.
And now back to the best of Hello Houston on News 88.7 with Ernie Manous, Celestia Sherman, and Frank Billingsley.
to Brittany Davis, a musician that is in our studio right now. I listen to her music, and it's just fabulous. She's a composer, keyboardist, a singer who uses her music to uplift and fight for a more inclusive world. Her music mixes funk, soul, jam rock, noise rock, blues, jazz, pop, R&B, music that is undefinable in many ways. It's a very unique sound, and she decided to stop to talk with us. Brittany, welcome to Hello Houston. How are you?
I'm doing great. Thank you so much for having me this morning.
I want to point out the obvious to us. You are blind.
Yes.
And have you been blind your whole life?
My entire life, yes.
And how did you find your way into this musical world?
Well, it found its way into me, honestly. I say music is my first language and then English, so there's that.
So, Brittany, you play the piano. How did you land on that instrument?
Or did it land on you?
I hope not. Well, the thing about it is, with piano, everything that I experience in tones. I don't see light, I don't see color, so everything is in tones. And when I was at my preschool, I noticed that the piano had a lot of those tones on it.
So like chords and runs?
More like notes or sequences of notes.
Yep.
That's why I say music is my first language.
It speaks to you.
Yeah, somehow it speaks to me.
I like
don't know how to explain it.
And so how old were you when you started playing the piano?
3.5 years old.
Oh my goodness. Wow. And when were you composing? How old were when you were really just hitting it and that was your song?
3.5 years
old. Oh wow. You were a prodigy for sure.
That's what they were saying, but I didn't feel prodigy, whatever that word is. Prodigy. Yeah, think of that word.
So your music is really eclectic. Where do you find your inspiration when it comes to composing and writing and, putting it all together?
Well, first and foremost, I gotta say that God really had the first say in everything that I did, and I feel like the Lord really gave me the guidance to do it. And also when it comes to the culture that I'm a part of, just listening to so many different styles, it just hits me. Like sometimes I really need to really, really rap, and sometimes I really, really need to sing, and sometimes maybe I just need to sing the blues because it hurts so much. I can't. I don't know how. I always find it interesting to see how people stick to one genre. Not saying that it's wrong or nothing.
Yeah. Well, I was going to ask you what your favorite is, but I don't think you have a favorite. I think you love it all.
I can't.
I know. I understand. I understand. And you really use your platform for inclusion.
Yes.
I read about that.
Absolutely.
All right. Tell me your philosophy about the world.
So I always feel like,
that's a big question.
It doesn't be the whole world, but what do you live by?
Well, just that, life is so much more expansive than we give it credit for, or than we give it space to really inhabit. I was having a really interesting conversation with some folk about different ways that we include sensory experiences in our expressions of art and the decisions in which those affect us. A lot of the times when we think about sensory experiences and things that you touch and pull and play with, we think of that for kids. But somebody like me, there's so many instances in my day where I experience a loss of information more than a gaining. In this world where things can come to you at a snap of a finger, for somebody who is totally blind and has been since birth, that's not always possible. And we haven't found real ways to really inhabit those spaces where those things are lost.
I'm curious about your understanding of the universality of your message, that other people receive it. We're all individual. You come with your own unique set of challenges, and yet your message connects with so many people. Why is that, do you think?
I think it's literally because I want to make room for that inhabitants. The same way I feel like I didn't feel included, I want that feeling to be felt for other people. Mm-hmm. And I think that that's what closes the door. That's what snaps it shut. That's what takes it home. Is that when people hear my music, they're going to know that there's a place for them in all of it. If not all of it, some of it. Somewhere you're going to hear you.
Yeah.
You're going to hear what you feel. You're going to hear what you know. You're going to feel that thing, whatever it is. If it's grief, if it's love, if it's healing taking place, whatever it is, you're going to be able to find it.
Yeah.
Because that's what it is. It's
in and amongst all of that message, there's also a whole lot of fun. And your music is extremely uplifting.
We're having fun. That's the best part. We're not trying to make some kind of like secret message to try to like, okay, Sepricon isn't even a word.
Yeah.
But that's like one of my trending songs right now. How is that? You know what I'm saying? Like, we're just, and everybody's like, oh, is it the horoscope? Is it no, it's just, Sepricon is literally the translation of an experience. Like, okay, like, if you say to me, Brittany, this table is green, that's like you're saying peach potato. It's like, what do that mean?
Yeah.
That's what Sepricon is. That is the translation of what it feels like to be given something visual with a non-visual context.
Have you ever used your music to see color?
I am color. That's the music. That is the color.
Yeah.
I am the color.
Nice.
And it resonates not just in color but in sound. So it's like your voice could be a color because of its sound.
And I mean no disrespect with this question.
Go ahead.
But I'm curious if your lack of vision actually is a freeing thing for you that gives you an ability to go beyond what limits us and what we see and feel restricted by, and that you don't have that restriction.
You know, that's a really powerful question, and I want to kind of testify that because I feel like for the longest time I haven't felt free. I don't feel free because even though I have all of these textural ideas and sonic ideas and, you know, all of these ways that I wish to, what I say, verb or to do my art, it doesn't feel acceptable in the visual world or in the visual context. So I feel bound to try to make myself just fit. Like, get in that visual context, get in there. You know, and it can't, and it doesn't always work. So it's not always freeing is what I'm trying to say. Yeah. But I've come to realize that there are some places where when I take those liberties, people really catch on.
Yeah.
And it's beautiful, like Sepricon. Sepricon's a great, you know, a great kind of platform for that.
Yeah, it's like an umbrella word.
Yeah, it's an umbrella word because it's an experience.
We're talking to Brittany Davis, a blind musician on all genres. She's just soul, jam rock, noise rock, funk, everything, almost everything you can name.
Rap.
Does it ever feel unreal?
Right now, it does. Yeah. Honestly, like I just made an entire anthem for the Seattle soccer female team, the Rain.
Yeah.
Like,
love that.
Like it just happened, and it took off like a rocket, man. It's great.
So where's home base for you?
Right now, Seattle, Washington.
Oh, beautiful.
Yes.
What does performing give to you when you're up on that stage, when you hear that audience?
When I feel that energy, it's like when I'm performing, I feel sighted. I feel like I can see. I feel like I can see it all so clear, what I'm supposed to do while I'm here. I got the controls now, man. I'm at the mixing board, and I'm able to dial in as deeply as I need to. No, that's the really motive truth. Yeah. Like, that's it. At BrittanyDavisMusic.net. You can go to Instagram, Brittany Davis Music, Facebook, Brittany Davis Music. I'm on Loose Screw Records website. That's my record label that I work with. And yeah, you can find me all over everything.
She's everywhere.
I'm everywhere. Spotify, Apple, let's go.
Thank you so much. Thank you for being here.
Absolutely.
Musician, singer, and composer Brittany Davis. Again, thank you so much for being on Hello Houston.
Thanks, guys.
And now back to the best of Hello Houston on News 88.7 with Ernie Manous, Celestia Sherman, and Frank Billingsley.
So In recent years, vinyl records have seen this huge resurgence in popularity, becoming the music industry's most popular physical media format. I did not know that, but there you have it. Did you know that there are only 4 record manufacturing plants in Texas, and only one of them is in Houston?
I'm not surprised.
There you go. It's located in the East End. It's called 610 Record Manufacturing. It opened in June of last year, probably for my birthday, and is the city's first record manufacturer in 30 years. And with us now is the owner and operator, Joel Hoyle. Welcome to Hello Houston, Joel.
Thank you.
We're glad you're here. So, all right, you grew up with vinyl, I'm sure, like we all did. So when did you say, I want to sell, I want to do this, I want to operate and sell it?
I guess 2018, I quit my corporate day job and decided, my wife actually decided this is our one chance to go for it.
So she supported you in this move.
Yeah, absolutely. She gave me the best advice ever. If we're going to open a business, it needs to be something you love, because when it's stressful and crazy, it'd be a lot easier to sleep at night.
She's a good lady. She's talking about.
Manufacturing, though. So when I think of manufacturing, are you actually making the vinyl records?
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, we're basically like the high-powered waffle iron.
Yeah.
Oh, nice.
That's amazing.
Help people understand the difference between the record label companies and manufacturing.
Yes. Well, the term actually record label for the company that markets and promotes records actually came from the actual label on a record. So that's basically the record label, the record company is just who does that. They go out and sign artists, they market and promote them. For us, we are the manufacturer. So
they call you and say, hey, we want,
you need to press these.
Exactly. We need so many records of this particular title.
And then who's going to sell it? Are you going to sell it, or?
No, we actually are not retail at all whatsoever. So we're strictly like business to business, or wholesale.
So when you're manufacturing these, where do you send them out to? Where who's your highest person that buys them?
So our customers are record labels, managers, and independent artists themselves. And basically, wherever they tell us to ship their records, we send them to them. But from there, the responsibility sales-wise to the public, that's their world, not ours. So.
And I'm not asking you your business, but how much does a record cost these days? If I went out to buy I go to these shops that are all resale of records, but a new album, how much would it cost these days?
Full retail, you're looking at about an average about $40.
Really?
Yeah, it's expensive. Even on the resale market, we were talking about record collections or whatever, but back in the day, you could go to any resale shop and get a few handfuls of records for $10 or $20.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. Not anymore.
People say, and I'm not an expert at all, but they say that vinyl just sounds better.
Yeah, let's talk fidelity here. What is it about vinyl that gives you that sound?
It's basically the closest. It's the format that gets the closest to the natural frequency range of the human ear.
Really?
Yeah, and that's why a lot of people would describe the sound as being warm, and because it genuinely is comforting and pleasing to our ears.
But so many of us hear records, and the first sound you hear is.
Yeah, I hate that noise.
It's what you think of when you think of vinyl.
Yeah, very good. Thank you.
A lot of records.
Yeah, people love that noise. They romanticize it, but no.
But so are you saying? And I didn't grow up. I grew up in the CD era.
Yeah.
I barely even. I think I've maybe seen a vinyl. I see them at.
Our son didn't know what they were.
Yeah. And so what I'm saying is so are today Sabrina Carpenter? Yeah. Is she on vinyl?
Absolutely, 100%.
So is that what would you say is the most surprising thing that you've encountered since you've been in the manufacturing of vinyl? In manufacturing.
Like as far as who's releasing records?
Yeah, what?
No. And the reason I say that is because if you're an artist of any size, whether you're Sabrina Carpenter all the way down to a local band down the street, the most important thing you want to be selling is a physical music product. You're going to make money off of that.
That's true.
You're not making money off of streaming. Sabrina Carpenter may, unless you're as popular as she is and has the money behind her that she does, you don't stand a chance to make any money in the streaming world. So for by far the majority of musical artists worldwide, selling records is the most profitable thing you can do outside of.
Do you have a statistic on the resurgence? I mean, how many records are we talking?
It's more than $1 billion a year industry just in this country alone.
New manufacturing.
Absolutely.
Wow.
That's retail, and
so that means
depending on who you talk to, those numbers are untrue one direction or another.
Okay, but it is a lot of people buying record players.
But people are buying CDs like they used to. So it's so interesting that they go to vinyl.
But they've come back to the OG of vinyl.
Yeah.
And also, they often say, an artist only makes their money now by touring and by their merchandising.
Yeah.
And so when you go and see them in concert, to pick up the vinyl,
absolutely,
that's a great keepsake of an artist. And take you on a little Ernie story.
Okay.
So, artist, Nana Muscuri, biggest selling female recording artist of all time. First album I bought of hers, used record store, 33 cents. 120 albums later, she's now in her 90s. She just released her most recent album, her Happy Birthday album. She released it digitally and back on vinyl again.
Absolutely.
And I bought it from Germany, so I would have the vinyl of it. I don't know if I'll ever play it, but just to have it.
Ernie, do you have a record player? We know that.
I was telling our guests right before we started that I had 5,000 albums at my height of collecting albums. Moves and stuff, I've dwindled down now. I've only got about 300 to 400 albums now that I keep. But I do love still the idea, the thought of having the album.
Absolutely. And the scenario you just described is very common. Streaming and vinyl go hand in hand.
Yeah.
A lot of people think that they're clash with each other, but they're not. Like when I was growing up, I'm assuming you all too, maybe. Basically, the radio was the king, right? So now streaming has basically replaced radio.
Yeah.
So when people are hearing something on streaming and they like it, they want to go support the artist, they go buy the record. And young people especially know that, which is why they're the largest demographic of people buying records.
I remember hearing back in the 80s when CDs were first coming out. Gotta be careful, the sound is going to fade over time. And now recently I've seen news stories that are saying CDs you have from the old days, they're starting to lose the sound. It's going away.
Wow. Yeah, they literally are falling apart.
Yeah.
I'm actually old enough to remember when they called it the transition in music retail, when CDs were coming on, pushing out vinyl.
Right.
And like a lot of the record labels were sending out reps to give us these demonstrations about CDs being indestructible. And there's this classic video that used to be sent around where the guy would grab a CD and like throw it on the floor and pick it up like, it still plays.
Boy, but one little scratch could
Well,
throw
I have
you
a
off.
story.
Exactly. They didn't mention
about my CD. I remember begging for a Walkman, but I remember thinking it was going to be so cool, but you had to hold it a certain way with my CD because it would just bounce if you were walking.
Absolutely. Sales is sales, right?
Yeah. So quick question for you. You were saying on average a vinyl would cost about $40. How much does it cost to actually make it?
For our customer, it depends on the quantity, just like anything else. So our minimum is 100 records. And like fully packaged, retail ready, that will cost you about $17 a record.
Thank you so much for being here.
Joel Hoyle is the owner and operator of 610 Record Manufacturing.
Coming up in the Best of Hello Houston, author Jelani Cobb will tell us about his book, 3 or More is a Riot, Notes on How We Got Here, 2012 to 2025. This is News 88.7.
This is Ira Glass. On This American Life, sometimes we just show up somewhere, turn on our tape recorders, and see what happens.
If you can't get 7 cars in 12 days, you got to look yourself in the mirror and say, holy, what, are you kidding me?
Like at this car dealership, trying to sell its monthly quota of cars, and it is not going well.
I just don't want one balloon to a car. Balloon the whole freaking place so it looks like a circus.
Real life stories every week.
Saturdays at 11 a.m. and Wednesdays at 9 p.m. on News 88.7.
This is Jennifer Hickson of The Moth. Moth shows feature eyewitness accounts of the most important or hilarious or moving stories in a person's life. We don't allow any sort of script on stage, so the stories have the excitement of a sporting event, but the intimacy of a tete-a-tete. The Moth is simple and satisfying, like a home-cooked meal for the ears. That's the Moth Radio Hour from the Public Radio Exchange, prx.org.
The Moth Radio Hour, Saturdays at noon on News 88.7.
And now back to Hello Houston. Join the conversation. Call now, 713-440-8870, or email us at talk@hellohouston.org. And now here's Ernie Manus, Celestia Sherman, and Frank Billingsley.
Over the past decade, America has been shaken by movements for racial justice, gender equality, gun reform, and policing, and by backlash backlashes that followed. Few people have chronicled this turbulent era with more insight than Jelani Cobb, acclaimed historian, Pulitzer finalist, staff writer at The New Yorker, and Dean of Columbia's Graduate School of Journalism. How he found time to join us, I just don't know.
Yes, amazing.
From the front lines of Ferguson and Charleston to his wide-angle historical analysis, Jelani has helped us understand not just what happened, but why it happened. His new book, Three or More, is a riot, notes on how we got here. He brings together more than a decade of his reporting and reflections to map the arc of this moment in American life. Jelani Cobb, welcome to Hello Houston.
Thank you. Happy to be here.
If folks want to join the conversation, it's easy. Call or text 713-440-8870. Let me take you then into something that this kind of touches on. It's how we are influenced by the mass media today.
Sure.
And how it tells us what to do and how to think and where we go. And then with the onset of social media that has so shifted that to hyperdrive, do we think for ourselves anymore?
I mean, I think that we have always had a kind of contest for public opinion. And when you go back and you look at, people who were particularly thoughtful, in the early part of the 20th century as mass media was just beginning to dawn, there was a question about whether or not, and some people thought, the job of the media is to help mold public opinion around issues that may be too complicated for the public to understand. There was one viewpoint that people had about this, and other people thought, well, we have to just give people as much information as possible and let them come to their own conclusions, and we have to trust people's intuition and their intelligence and so on. What we have now is we've gotten rid of the gatekeepers.
I was just writing that down as my note to ask you about. Yeah.
So we've gotten rid of the gatekeepers, and the idea of gatekeepers had a particular taint to it. I understand why people didn't want. I'm old enough to remember when we only had 3 television networks, and they had a stranglehold on what the parameters of discussion would be, and we've moved beyond that. The problem is that we've gotten rid of the things about gatekeepers that we did not like. We've overlooked many of the things that we did like, which, for instance, the development of the arc of ethics in media and journalism, the things that people did learn over the course of the 20th century, say we shouldn't report stories like this, things that we take as basic now, to not report the names of sexual assault victims. That actually was contentious at one point. That actually had to be learned, by media over the course of time. At one point in media, news reporting, especially crime reporting, they would put in parentheses the race or ethnicity of the suspect, which did nothing but kind of fan public, flames of tension and anger and so on. We did learn some things. And some of that has gone out the window, where we have now just 10,000 candles. Anyone can buy a smartphone, and an hour later they are a media person, and operating in a media capacity. And we have to try to find our way somewhat back to a middle ground.
And it's interesting that you're talking about this, looking at it from a technology standpoint, and how technology has evolved with media and the way we report things within news outlets. I was reading a New York Times article about your book, the one that you're here to talk to us about, and they described it as a timeline of the unravelment of American democracy. And that is a question that we don't necessarily ask exactly like that, but so many times I've heard from people on all different levels and different political spectrums, like, how did we get here?
Yeah, I think it started with the whole Christmas tree before Thanksgiving. That's what did
it. How did we get here? Looking at 2012 and what happened in 2012 to now in 2025.
Sure. So more seriously, what we are seeing really follows particular patterns, that are indelible and easily kind of seen. Last year, 2024, was the centennial anniversary of the 1924 Immigration Reform Act. If you went back to the congressional debates and opinion editorials and so on in favor of the 1924 Immigration Restriction Act, you would be hard-pressed to distinguish that from what we are hearing right now. We have had periods of time where the enormously contentious ICE policies, where people are being snatched off the street and so on, our equivalent of that was around, the World War II era, the immediate aftermath of World War II, the Palmer raids, in which people were suspected. This was largely targeting the Jewish community at that time, very many of whom were recent immigrants. But that community bore the brunt of a kind of anti-immigrant hostility and suspicion that culminated in the Attorney General of the United States, A. Mitchell Palmer, authorizing federal agents to snatch anyone who they thought was suspect and deport them. And so we have seen these kinds of themes in our past previously.
Right.
We haven't really grappled with why. And part of it is about demography. We've always had a very complicated relationship with demography in this country, partly because we start with the idea of we the people, and we don't really define who we is referring to.
Yeah, and that's a great point. And I also think that to that point, I've also heard people say, we're asking, how did we get here, or why did we get here? And I've heard from people of color say, no, we've always been this, but now we're just recognizing it in different ways because it continues to happen.
Let me ask you this. I have a question about, it's just the same idea.
Yeah.
It seems like for a long time, we were sort of 2 steps forward, 1 step back. But since Trayvon Martin, 2014, I read in your book, we've been more 1 step forward, 2 steps back.
Yeah, so that's very true. Like the first thing that I ever wrote for the New Yorker, so 99% of these pieces were drawn from the New Yorker. There are, I think, 2 pieces that I did that were not in the New Yorker that are in this collection. And the first thing I ever wrote for the New Yorker was about Trayvon Martin, which wasn't anywhere near as well known as it is now. It was kind of a news blip out of Florida. And my editor was like, why don't you look into this, see if there's anything there, and so on. And of course, that became a really central moment, in this trajectory that we're talking about. For one reason, when the first time that the phrase Black Lives Matter was used in any significant way on social media was in the aftermath of the acquittal of George Zimmerman in the trial for Trayvon Martin's death. And then, 3 years later, as some people will recall, in Charleston, South Carolina, 9 African Americans were killed in the sanctuary of the Emmanuel AME Church by a white supremacist by the name of Dylan Roof. Dylan Roof said in the police interrogation following his arrest that he had been moved to act in such a manner by the Trayvon Martin case, in which case he thought that George Zimmerman had been victimized and by being arrested for shooting an unarmed 17-year-old. And in that moment,